They call her the Grey Ghost, a ship that carried thousands across the Atlantic, served in war, and now sits in the harbor of Long Beach, California, silent but never truly still. The Queen Mary is not just a relic of history, it is said to be alive, breathing with the echoes of those who never left. And tonight, you will hear her story. This isn't a made-up ghost tale. It's a place you can visit even now, a hotel where guests check in expecting luxury, but sometimes leave in terror. The Queen Mary has been called one of the most haunted locations in America. Some believe the walls themselves are cursed, soaked with screams from the ocean depths. The first time I stepped aboard, I could feel it. The air wasn't just heavy, it was watching me. The sound of water lapping against the hull seemed louder, sharper, like whispers rising from beneath the sea. And as I would soon learn, the Queen Mary doesn't forgive curiosity. The ship was built in the 1930s, a marvel of her time. She carried celebrities, royalty, soldiers, but she also carried death. Over 40 people are recorded to have died aboard, some in gruesome accidents. One sailor, crushed in the engine room by a watertight door, is said to still linger there. A woman dressed in white is often seen dancing in the empty ballroom. Children are heard laughing in the empty pool, though the pool has been dry for decades. I had heard the stories, but hearing is nothing compared to being inside. It was late in the evening when I checked into my cabin. The hallway stretched long and narrow, its carpet faded, its walls holding the scent of age and salt water. The ship seemed to breathe around me, metal creaking, pipes moaning, faint vibrations humming through the floor as though the engines were still alive. I remember telling myself, it's just an old ship. Wood and steel don't haunt you. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. That night, I decided to explore. The ship was mostly quiet, with only a handful of tourists wandering. But the deeper I went, the emptier it felt. Lights flickered. The air grew colder. And when I reached the first-class swimming pool, I swear I heard something that made my blood run cold. It was faint at first, like the sound of splashing, but the pool has been drained since the 1960s. The tiles are cracked, dust clinging to the walls. There should have been silence, and yet, I heard it. Water splashing, a girl giggling. Then a child's voice calling out softly, "Mommy." I froze, my breath caught in my chest. The sound echoed across the empty chamber. And then silence. I told myself it was a trick of acoustics. Old ships echo, after all. But as I turned to leave, I saw something at the far end of the pool. A shadow, small, like the outline of a girl standing, watching me. I blinked and she was gone. Heart pounding, I stumbled out of the pool room and into the corridor. That's when I felt it. The temperature dropped so suddenly I could see my breath. The hallway lights buzzed and dimmed, and from behind me, footsteps echoed. Slow, deliberate, I turned. No one was there. The Queen Mary has a way of pulling you deeper. She whispers, she tempts, and despite the fear clawing at my throat, I kept walking, each step taking me closer to the heart of the ship toward the engine room. People say the most haunted part of the Queen Mary isn't the staterooms or the ballroom, but the machinery that once kept her alive. That's where John Petter, a young sailor, was crushed by one of the massive watertight doors during a routine drill. They say his spirit never left. Visitors report hearing banging, boots on metal, even feeling a hand grab them in the dark. And as I approached, I felt it too. The door to the engine room was slightly ajar, though I hadn't seen anyone else around. Inside, shadows moved with the rhythm of swinging chains and dormant machinery. The smell of rust and oil lingered like a ghost itself. I stepped inside. My flashlight beam cut across the rusting catwalks, pipes twisting like veins, ladders leading into endless darkness. Every sound echoed: the creak of my shoes, the drip of condensation. And then, without warning, the door behind me slammed shut. The sound rang out like a gunshot. I spun around, flashlight shaking, my pulse hammering in my ears. No one was there. No wind, no draft. Just me and the dark belly of a ship that should have been dead, but was very much awake. That was when I heard it. A man's voice, ragged, hollow, like air through broken lungs. "Get out." My flashlight flickered, my breath froze, and I realized I was no longer alone. The engine room swallowed me whole. The air was thick, heavy, and suffocating, as if every breath I took was borrowed from someone else. My flashlight struggled against the darkness, its beam bending strangely, like the shadows were swallowing the light itself. I told myself again that I was alone. Just an old ship creaking, just the steel cooling at night. But deep down, I knew better. The Queen Mary had been waiting. The voice still echoed in my head, "Get out." I gripped the rail of the catwalk, my palms slick with sweat. Below me, the labyrinth of machinery stretched into darkness, massive pistons, pipes as thick as tree trunks, chains dangling from the ceiling. My footsteps echoed against the steel, but every now and then, I swore I heard another set of footsteps. Just half a beat behind mine, I stopped. The echo stopped. I started again, and this time, the footsteps continued even after I froze. Slow, heavy, measured. Something was down there with me. I swept the flashlight toward the low level. For a split second, I caught the shape of a man. Just a silhouette, broad shoulders, a cap tilted low. He moved between the pipes, vanishing as quickly as he appeared. My heart pounded against my ribs. I wanted to call out, but my throat locked tight. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but some part of me, some foolish part, needed to know the truth. I took the stairs down. Each step groaned under my weight, the metal clanging like a warning bell. The deeper I went, the colder it grew. My breath fogged the air, swirling in front of my face. At the bottom, I reached the infamous, watertight door number 13, the one where John Petter had been crushed during a drill in 1966. They say he got caught between the massive door and the frame, bones breaking under thousands of pounds of pressure. His screams echoed through this very chamber before the life was crushed out of him. The door stood there, silent, massive, and still. My flashlight traced its rusted edges. That's when I saw it, fresh fingerprints smeared across the steel. 5 distinct marks pressed into the dust as though someone had touched it only moments ago. My hand trembled as I reached out. The metal was ice cold, colder than anything else around me. And then, without warning, the door shuddered. I staggered back. The ship groaned. Somewhere deep within the machinery, gears began to grind. For a horrifying moment, I thought the door was about to close again, slamming shut with unstoppable force. But it didn't. Instead, the sound stopped, leaving me in silence. Or so I thought. A low moan drifted through the chamber. Not metal, not pipes human. Agonized, desperate, it rose into a cry. The unmistakable sound of a man screaming for help. I clutched my flashlight, spinning in every direction. Shadows danced across the walls, and in one of them I saw him. A sailor, young, maybe in his 20s. His uniform was torn, his face pale and twisted with fear. His chest looked caved in, as if invisible weight still pressed against him. His mouth opened wide, but the screams seemed to come from everywhere at once. I stumbled backward, tripping over a chain, my light jerking wildly, and then he was gone. The silence after was worse than the noise. My heart hammered, sweat pouring down my back, yet the air around me was freezing. I wanted out. I wanted to run back to the safety of my cabin, lock the door, and forget I ever stepped inside this cursed place. But as I turned toward the stairway, something else happened. The door, it began to close. Slow at first, the massive steel slab groaning on its hinges. I froze, horror gripping me as the opening narrowed, the final escape sealing itself off. I ran, boots clanging against the metal floor, my lungs burning. I made it through just as the door slammed shut behind me with a thunderous crash. The sound shook the entire chamber. My knees buckled, my body collapsing onto the catwalk. I was shaking so violently I could barely breathe, and then I felt it, a hand, on my shoulder, not gentle, not human, cold, clammy, the weight of death itself. I spun around, light flashing across empty air. Nothing, no one, but the mark remained. I could feel it on my skin, an icy grip, lingering even as I staggered back toward the exit. I ran. I don't remember the stairs, don't remember the hallways. Just the desperate pounding of my feet and the sense that something was chasing me. When I finally burst back into the main corridor, I was drenched in sweat, gasping for air, my flashlight flickering weakly. I wanted to believe it was over, that I had escaped. But the Queen Mary doesn't let go so easily. As I stood there, heart racing, I heard it again, the footsteps. Coming up the corridor, slow and steady, and this time they weren't behind me. They were coming straight toward me. The footsteps echoed closer, louder, until they seemed to fill the corridor. I froze, my back pressed against the wall, the beam of my flashlight trembling in my hand. The hall stretched long and empty, yet the sound kept coming, and then silence. For a moment, I thought it was over. But silence on the Queen Mary is never comfort. It's the inhale before the scream. A light flickered at the far end of the corridor. The bulbs buzzed, dimmed, then flared bright before plunging everything into darkness. My flashlight sputtered, threatening to die. I banged it against my palm, praying for light, when I caught a glimpse, just a fragment of movement. A man standing in the shadows, watching me. I blinked and he was gone. I didn't run this time. My legs wouldn't move. My body was no longer mine. It belonged to the ship. And the ship wanted me deeper. I don't know why I obeyed, but I did. I found myself walking down into the grand ballroom. The once glistening chandeliers now hung like cobwebbed skeletons, their crystals dulled with dust. The room stretched wide, polished wood floors that once carried the footsteps of dancers, but tonight it was empty. Or so it should have been. The moment I stepped inside, the air changed. It grew warm, humid, thick with the scent of old perfume and cigarette smoke. The silence cracked open, and music seeped through the walls, soft, distant, like a gramophone spinning a forgotten tune. A waltz. And then they appeared. Not fully just shadows at first. Figures swirling across the floor in pairs, faint outlines shimmering in the dark. Men in tuxedos, women in gowns, their movements graceful, elegant, until one by one their heads turned toward me, empty faces, hollow eyes. The music slowed, warped, grinding into a distorted moan. The dancers circled me, their bodies brushing past, though I could feel nothing but cold air. They tightened their circle, faster, faster, until I thought I'd suffocate. And then just as suddenly, they vanished. The ballroom fell silent. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I staggered backward, gasping for air, when I saw her. At the far end of the room, a woman in a white gown. Her hair perfectly curled, her posture elegant. She stood near the stage, facing me. For a moment, she was beautiful, radiant, glowing in the dark, but as she stepped forward, the glow changed. Her skin turned pale, almost translucent. Her eyes clouded over with milky white. Her smile stretched too wide, too unnatural. And then she screamed. The sound pierced the room, sharp and shattering. The chandeliers shook. My flashlight cracked, sputtering sparks. I turned and bolted, fleeing into the nearest hallway. My lungs burned, but I didn't stop until I reached the first-class swimming pool. My chest heaved as I leaned against the railing, staring down at the drained pool below. The silence was suffocating. The tiles, once white, were stained with decades of neglect. The diving board stood crooked like a gallows. The air smelled faintly of mold and something else. Something sweet, like rotting fruit. And then it began again. Splashes, water slapping against tiles, laughter. I froze. The pool was bone dry, yet the sound of water filled the chamber. My flashlight beam swept the empty basin, and for a moment, I could almost see it. The water shimmering, glistening, full. Children played, splashing each other, diving from the edges. Their giggles echoed, joyful yet wrong, hollow, too sharp, like the sound of glass breaking. "Mommy," one voice rang out. A little girl's cry. "Where are you, Mommy?" I swallowed hard, trying to force my voice steady. "Who's there?" The giggling stopped. The silence pressed down like a weight, and then tiny wet footprints appeared on the tiles, leading up out of the pool. Step by step, across the floor, they stepped right in front of me. I stumbled back, my knees trembling. My light flickered, and in that half-second of darkness, I saw her. A little girl. Her hair wet, dripping across her face. Her dress clung to her small frame, soaked through. Water poured from her mouth as she tried to speak, but only a gurgling sound came out. She reached for me. Instinct took over. I stumbled backward, crashing into the wall. The girl vanished. The sound of rushing water filled the chamber, echoing like a flood, though the pool remained dry. The tiles beneath my feet grew slick, damp, though no water was visible. My shoes slipped, my body shaking with terror. I pushed off the wall and ran, desperate to escape the suffocating pull of that place. I didn't stop until I reached my cabin. I slammed the door shut, bolted it, and collapsed onto the bed, chest heaving. For a long time, I lay there, trying to convince myself it wasn't real, that the ship wasn't alive, that the laughter, the screaming, the icy grip of a dead sailor's hand, they were tricks of a tired mind. But then the knock came. 3 soft raps on my cabin door. I froze, heart pounding, every muscle locking in place. And then again, knock, knock, slow, patient, unmistakable. Someone was standing just outside, and I knew with every fiber of my being, it wasn't anyone living. Knock, knock, knock. The sound drilled into the silence of my cabin, each rap heavier than the last. My throat was dry, my hands numb, yet I couldn't stop staring at the door. My body screamed to stay put, but my mind whispered something worse. If you don't open it, it will open on its own. I crept closer, my footsteps soft against the carpet. The air in the room had turned icy, fog blooming with every breath. The doorknob rattled. Just once, as though someone was testing it, and then the voice. "Let me in." It was a man's voice, low and ragged, as though dragged from the bottom of the ocean. My knees buckled. I pressed myself against the far wall, shaking my head, whispering over and over, "No, no, no." The knocks grew violent. Boom, boom, boom. The door trembled in its frame, dust falling from the ceiling. I shut my eyes, praying it would stop, when suddenly silence. I opened my eyes. The door was open, not wide, just enough for darkness to spill in, a crack, yawning like a mouth, and in that sliver of space, a shadow stood, tall, broad, shoulders hunched, watching, waiting. I lunged forward, slamming the door shut with every ounce of strength I had. The impact rattled my bones, the echo thundering through the cabin. I twisted the lock, holding it with trembling hands, but deep down I knew locks meant nothing here. The room groaned around me. The walls seemed to breathe, pulsing with invisible heartbeats. My mirror fogged, words scrawling across the glass from the inside out. "You can't leave." I stumbled back, tripping over the bed, my chest heaving. The lights flickered, dimmed, then extinguished. Darkness swallowed everything, and then I felt it. The mattress shifted, the sheets tugged. Something was climbing into bed with me. I scrambled backward, my flashlight clattering to the floor. Its weak beam rolled across the room and landed on the figure lying beside me. A man. His skin was gray, waterlogged. His chest caved in, bones cracked at impossible angles. His eyes were black pits, his mouth torn open in a soundless scream. It was him, John Petter, the sailor from the engine room. He reached for me, fingers broken, twisted, dripping with something dark that smelled of rust and salt water. His hand brushed my arm, and in that instant I felt it all, the crushing weight of steel, the agony of bones shattering, the terror of being trapped as the door closed. His death, his pain, all of it. I screamed, wrenching free, stumbling toward the door. My flashlight spun, casting shadows that twisted across the walls. The cabin shrank around me, smaller, tighter, as though the ship itself was folding in, swallowing me whole. I tore the door open and bolted into the corridor. My footsteps echoed wildly, the hallway stretching longer and longer, no end in sight. Doors blurred past me, their numbers twisting, repeating, as if I were running in circles. And all the while, the sounds followed, boots clanging on steel, children laughing, a woman weeping, the ship's entire graveyard chasing me, voices overlapping in a chorus of the damned. I turned a corner and froze. The hallway ended in a mirror. My reflection stared back at me, pale, drenched in sweat, eyes wide with terror, but then it changed. My reflection smiled, slowly, cruelly, its lips moving though mine did not. "You're one of us now," it whispered. I staggered back. The floor tilted, the walls groaning. The ship roared with life, as if the engines had reignited after decades of silence. My body trembled, my vision blurring. And then just as suddenly, it all stopped. Silence, stillness. I opened my eyes. It was morning. I stood on the deck of the Queen Mary, the sun rising over Long Beach Harbor. Tourists wandered nearby, laughing, pointing, oblivious. The air was warm, alive, normal. Had I dreamed it? Hallucinated in the stale air of an old ship? I told myself yes. I told myself none of it was real. But as I turned to leave, I caught my reflection in one of the porthole windows. And there it was, a handprint, pressed against my shoulder, pale, gray, wet. The same mark I had felt in the engine room. I stumbled back, heart thundering. The glass fogged from the inside, words appearing slowly, each letter carved by unseen fingers. Come back. The tourists around me didn't see it. Only me. The message smeared, faded, vanished into nothing. I left the Queen Mary that day, vowing never to return. But sometimes, in the dead of night, I wake to the sound of knocking. 3 soft raps at my door, and a man's voice, low and ragged, whispering through the dark, "Let me in."